to another inspiring episode of the What's Your Dream podcast. Today, we are thrilled to host Andrea Johnson, a transformational leadership coach with 25 years of experience in higher education, including roles at the Johns Hopkins Sidney Kimmel Cancer Center and the University of Virginia School of Medicine. Since August 2021, Andrea has dedicated herself to empowering executives and founders to lead authentically and with conviction and confidence. A certified Maxwell leadership speaker, trainer, coach, and DISC behavioral analysis consultant, she specializes in helping clients uncover their core values to become impactful leaders. Andrea's passion is equipping female leaders to define a new culture by trusting their ability to think critically, create imaginatively, and lead effectively. Join us as we explore her journey and insights, emphasizing that it's not what you do, but who you are that defines you. Get ready to be inspired by Andrea Johnson's vision for authentic leadership. Welcome, Andrea. We are so happy to have you on What's Your Dream podcast.
My dream is to be on yours. It sounds great.
Awesome. We will go ahead and jump right in and get started with the questions if you're good with that.
Absolutely.
Awesome. What is your biggest dream or aspiration?
I was joking with my husband yesterday. I'm a transformational leadership coach for women. And I said from the beginning that I would love to coach somebody who is like the next female senator or the next female governor or the next female president. And now I'm like, oh, that could really be a thing now. So my biggest dream would be to take I love working with Gen Z, and I would love to take Gen Z women and because I'm a Gen Xer and make them into the next generation of leaders in my country.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah, it definitely is possible. And I've always said there should definitely be a woman president because it's like, think about who handles all the logistics in most houses. It's like, I feel like it would be amazing. I will say that. Not that I necessarily want to get into politics, but I do think
No,
it's
we don't have to do that.
yeah.
But I mean, it's just a lot of it is, but when we see things are possible, right? That's what this is all about, right? When we share our dreams with each other, then we see things are possible. We see dreams coming true, and it's like, oh, well, if a woman could be president, well, then maybe I could be president of this organization, or maybe I could be on the school board, or what I mean, be elected to something. So I think that sharing those things helps us all see what's possible.
Absolutely. All right. What makes you feel grateful and full of joy today?
I just literally recorded a podcast myself on this kind of thing. And one of the questions I answered was what I love about living life. And it's being able to work with women who are younger than me, who see me as a resource and see me as someone who they want to emulate. And I look back at them, these 20, 30, and 40-year-olds, because I'm 57, and I look at them and say, oh, honey, you can get so much further down the road than me, and being able to watch them soak that up and be willing to learn and grow and be motivated to do it just brings me so much joy.
Yeah, yeah. I was just reading a book the other day and it was talking about how, these parents are having kids so young that we're still growing up ourselves, right? And it's like I had a kid at 23, 25, and then again, not until 35. And so
Mm,
it was one of those things where I was like, okay, well, so who's going to raise them, right? And it was talking about how the elders or the grandparents in their community should be the ones actually raising them because
mm.
the 22, 25, even 30-year-olds are still raising themselves. And
Right.
your brain's not even fully developed until 26. And so it's like, that is so true. And so it's so cool to have, Gen Z and then you have millennials, right? In
Hmm.
between, which I am a
Hmm.
millennial and
Hmm.
very edge of millennial because I don't act like a millennial and a millennial. Let me do this. So I'm not stereotyping, but it's like, you get down to that Gen Z, it's like it's that generation gap, which is perfect. So I
Hmm.
love that that is your target audience because that is our future.
Yeah, I have a unique upbringing. I grew up in Seoul, Korea. And so I have this, when you talk about intergenerational and multi-generational work, I grew up around a community or in the community where people lived 4 generations in a household because that's the culture that they lived in. And unfortunately, my story includes, well, not unfortunately, I guess I shouldn't say that anymore. It includes infertility and adoption. So I didn't actually become a mother until I was 42.
Yeah.
So I am a Gen X mother of a Gen Z 15-year-old high schooler. So it being able to see the differences and being able to learn how to communicate together is a beautiful thing to watch. And to sometimes you're right, there needs to be a gap in between, and it just lights my fire just to see him go.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right. What are the most significant lessons you've learned throughout your life, and how have they shaped you as a person?
I think if I had to say the most significant lesson, it would be that I am okay and worthy as me. And this is the work that I now do because I use the word abdicated. I abdicated my ability to think for myself for so long. As children, Trisha, is it Trisha or Tris? Is that right? As I say it right, Trisha?
Trisha? Yeah.
Trisha. So as children, we I think are really very free and easy with who we are. We just live who we are. Nobody's really told us yet to not be opinionated. Nobody's told us not to be strong. And the older we get, the more we realize in order to fit into society, in order to fit into things, then we have to like tamp certain things down or manipulate our personalities in different ways. And some people are just blessed with personalities that automatically fit into whatever demographic they're raised in. I didn't. Mine was not. And so I am super critical thinker. I am curious as all get out. I call myself terminally curious. And so for me, learning is just part of my daily routine. It's just, I couldn't imagine not learning. I couldn't imagine not figuring things out or asking why, right? I was that kid. And so for years, in order to fit in, because of the demographic that I was raised in and the culture, I abdicated a lot of my decision making abilities, my critical thinking skills to people that were more educated, to people that knew better, to people who were in higher positions of power than me. And it took me getting to my 50th birthday
Mm.
where I turned 50 in August. And then in February, I lost my mother to a 15-year battle of breast cancer with an 8-year-old adopted son. And I was 22 years into a career that I realized I knew I didn't love it, but, we kind of get to that place where who does love their career, right? I mean, it's like we're kind of told this, no, 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 you don't have to love your work. You just need to support yourself and have insurance and all that kind of thing. And I hit 50, and that whole entire year for me was this giant wake up call.
Mhm.
And the lesson learned was don't abdicate who you are. Stop following other people's principles and priorities for how you live life because we're each created uniquely. And the lesson there is to show up as me because if I don't, you're missing out.
Yeah.
My husband's missing out. My son's missing out. The women around me are missing out. And so that's literally the lesson that has I've taken into my business and I use on a daily basis. And when I tell women, it's like if you don't show up at the table with what you're supposed to bring, we're missing the piece. We're missing the one ingredient to the recipe or I mean it just really that's super important and it's a lesson I continue to learn because I'm so conditioned to not let myself shine, right? So that's why I wanted to like talk about this, to talk about what your dream is. Because so many women I find are in the same position.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, like you said, they don't even know who they're supposed to show up as.
Yeah.
What's my purpose? What's my calling? Who's my true self? And I think that that's so cool because it's like I mean, I'm still figuring it out as well. I'm 42 and
Hmm.
I am, like, okay, really supposed to be diving into more spiritual work right now. And
Hmm.
that to me, it's so scary. Had this kind of like wake up call yesterday that was like, oh my gosh, I have this is what I'm supposed to bring to the world, not telling anybody
Mm.
what it is yet. And it's like, oh my gosh, this is like, it like literally turned my stomach in knots. And
Yeah.
that's where we grow. The
Right.
uncomfortable places is where we grow. And I think that a lot of women think, I mean, I definitely think everybody needs a coach. And it's like, women in general, just people in general, we have all the answers inside of us.
Oh,
And
yes.
and I think that it's just digging those up, and doing some subconscious, conscious, soul conscious work and
Yeah.
figuring out what that purpose is. And it's like, and it's great to ask opinions of others. You should absolutely have a coach so you can dive a little bit deeper into that stuff and get opinions and things. But it's like you said, don't put too much stock in what everybody else is doing and the stereotypes and the social
Mhm.
norms that people have put in place for you. I love, like I always say, don't be a drifter, right? Don't be the one
Right.
following the masses.
Yeah, and a lot of times we don't even realize that we're living with this cognitive dissonance, this idea that there's something that just doesn't feel right, and
Yeah.
we're, like, suppressing we're, like, putting that down, and we're saying, "No, I'm not gonna worry about that because everybody else says this is the way I'm supposed to do this, or this is what I was raised with, and evidently I'm wrong for thinking differently." And, I get that every once in a while when like I shared before we started recording, I just had 5 weeks worth of pneumonia, and when your body is depressed and you're or suppressed and you feel bad, that came up. I looked at my husband and I said, "Am I crazy?" And he's like, "Whoa, no, 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 no." It's like when you get better, you're going to look back on this and go, "Whoo, that's amazing how weak you feel." But I think it is important for us to examine. I call them my ABCs, my assumptions, beliefs, and conditioning, because they're so ingrained in us. And until we bump up against something, we don't realize we have an assumption and we think that our beliefs are unchanging, which is totally wrong. It is a fallacy. Our beliefs change every day when we learn something new. And, we're not going to talk about politics, but if you want to talk about beliefs changing, look at somebody who's changed political parties, religions. I mean, anything like that. And beliefs, solid foundational beliefs actually change. But our core values and who we are don't. And the conditioning is what we're fighting against all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. So, what inspires you and motivates you to keep going even when faced with challenges? It sounds like you had just had a really, really big one.
Did. And, as a solopreneur, I did not work for 5 weeks. And my money went because I'm in the process of pivoting to a different business model. And so I don't have a lot of recurring setup yet. It's starting. And so now it's like, even this morning, like, ooh, somebody bought a ticket. Ooh, I mean, little things like that are now getting me there. But um, a lot of what we have to learn is how we talk to ourselves, and being able to talk to myself and saying, "Remember, Andrea, all of these things that you did, all of these things that you have laid the groundwork for, they will pay off and you can get right back on the road." And, having the right support people in place matters. My spouse is extremely supportive, and I have women around me who are very supportive. But little things like I have a colleague that I used to work with. She actually worked for me at the University of Virginia. And we had a conversation. She's like, "I'm bored." Like, "I have this much administrative work. Can you please help me?" It's like being willing to ask for help. And when you get down like that, when you get in adverse situations, a lot of times we, of course, think we're supposed to handle it all ourselves. So being willing to ask for help, being willing to look further down the road and saying, "This is a long game." I use that phrase a lot. Playing the long game here, playing the long game. And on my podcast, I didn't record because I was caught up. I was not like ahead of the game. And I didn't put one out for 3 whole weeks. And lo and behold, I got the most downloads ever because I was on other people's podcasts and people were discovering me.
Yep.
So being willing to look at what I would call disconfirming evidence, the things that say, your brain's telling you that, but it's not really true.
Yeah.
And little things like a friend of mine got a phone call today from somebody that used to work for her where it was a really hard way to leave a job. And she said, "I just found you again. And I want you to know that I would work for you no matter where you go." And she said, "I really needed to hear that." Right. Because we need to be willing to recognize those things that come in our paths to help us see the long view and to play that long game. Those are the kinds of things that keep me going, which is what I call, because I'm the intentional optimist, right? So that's one of my things is I plan and I look ahead and I'm productive for the long haul.
Yeah. Intentional optimist. I haven't heard of that. I like it.
Yeah, that's actually the name of my business, and it is my personal. I call them my life principles. So it's 6 tenets of intentional optimism, and the optimistic piece is very much filled with hope, which is another place where I go whenever I'm in adverse situations. We need hope.
Oh, absolutely. And faith and belief, right?
Yes.
Like all those words are so interchangeable. Yes,
Hmm.
very much so. What do you hope to leave behind in the world as your legacy? And so I always kind of have a little caveat to this is like, what would you want someone to say about you at your funeral?
Yeah, this is funny. It's like this is the podcast I put out this last week was the 6 best questions podcasters have ever answered me and the ones that you need to ask yourself. And
Uh-huh.
this is one of them. And I
Uh-huh.
love it. And it's been phrased in many different ways. One actually said, how do you want your personal and professional legacy to be defined?
Mhm.
And I had a speaker at one of my conferences. I do live conferences. And I had a speaker at one of my conferences say, what do you need to write? You need to learn to write your own obituary.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, that's not, she goes, I know that sounds really morbid, but seriously, it is a really good practice. And the way I answer that is I want my legacy to be defined by the people that I help. If it's the people that I mentor, the people that I coach or encourage, sometimes I call myself a professional encourager. And I love, if you're not watching on video, I wear like bright clothes and sunny earrings, and because I do want to bring that into people's lives. But even my husband and my son, I want to be able to leave it better than I found it, whatever it is, and to be able to say, I was focused on making it better and making a difference and having an impact. And I want it to be defined by the people, the relationships that I've had along the way.
Yeah, it's so funny too because I actually started my book that I published a couple years ago with my what I want people to say about me at
Mm,
my funeral because it really does help define who you are or who you want
hmm
to be and who you strive to be. And so if
mm,
you're looking for that answer, that's one great way to do it because that's exactly how you want to show up in the world is
yeah.
being defined by the people that are going to be talking about you at your funeral. So,
Well, and nobody wants to say about themselves that she was really nice, a nice next door neighbor. Nobody wants that. And so sometimes when we are willing to go out that far and look at what we want to be able to look back at when we're at the top of the mountain or whatever, we actually have bigger dreams than we think. And so many women think they don't have big dreams, but when they do something like that, they turn around and go, "Oh, that is a kind of a big dream." If I want people to say she impacted women in this way, then I need to actually get out there and do it. And I actually need to, it becomes very motivational.
yeah, and take action, right?
Yeah.
Get out there and do it. Love it. What is one action you take every day to get closer to your dreams?
I do little small things at different times of the day. One of the first things I do every morning is I think we met there in a podcasting matchup group,
Mhm,
and I do not like to pitch myself.
mhm.
I am I am a storyteller and I love talking to people, but I don't like selling, I don't like pitching, I don't like any of that stuff. And I decided that if I wanted to meet people and if I wanted to do this, I had to get in there every morning. So one of the first things I do is I pitch my pod match pitches. I do those every day, first thing. And I mean, before I'm out of my pajamas. But I also take care of myself. So the very first thing I do is my spiritual practice. And that means that I have set myself up for the right mindset for the day, and then I pitch myself, and then I actually do my to-dos, and my I decide what are my one big thing today. What is my one goal? Because there's 10,000 things that are going to get on that plate, whether I put them there or not. So, what is my one goal? Right now, it's delegating to that friend who wants to help me. So, it's like that's my goal this week is delegating and making it simple because, like I said, I do have a 15-year-old son. So, there's a lot that goes on. And if we make things too complicated, we're just not going to get them done. So I make it pretty simple and a lot of things will come in, but making sure that those few things are done helps me a lot.
Yeah, and I think, delegating, it helps you, especially as a business owner, right? It's like it helps you be able to have those bigger dreams. It inspires you
Yes.
to be able to do things in your business that you wouldn't be able to do. And I highly suggest having a virtual assistant or something for
Yes.
because I own a web design and branding agency as well. And so it's like that's the business that is supporting my income. That is the one that I'm like trying to just become like get out of the business as much as possible and not be working in the business every day, just be
Yes.
working on the business and let someone else take care of the daily tasks and getting it to a place where systems and processes are just running.
Mm.
And so I'm able to come over and actually do my purposeful work. And so I think that that's it's such a big deal to be able to turn some of those tasks over to someone else. And I like as business owners, we kind of end up being a little control freakish, right? On like how things get done.
Nobody's going to do it like me. And nobody,
Exactly.
and I already know the system. It's easier than explaining it to you. No, honey, it's not.
Right.
If you've got somebody that you can trust, and this woman, I've had an administrative assistant before, a virtual assistant, but this woman, I trust her, I know her, I know all of her strengths and weaknesses. And it just, to me, it's a real blessing. And to be able to say, I even shared, like yesterday, I shared all these spreadsheets with her because she's like the systems person. So she'll get my system set up. It just, that feels really good. And I love, I'm in that process. So I love hearing that this is something that's already happened for you and that you're working on that.
Oh, absolutely, because it helps you become the visionary of your business, you know?
Yes.
And those tasks that we aren't, I mean, I'm not good at systems and processes. So I've actually been starting from the very beginning now and have a person working with me that is a systems and processes, the other side of the brain, working
Hmm.
with me, because if you do it once and lay it out once, it'll be good for not forever, but for a
Right.
while to be able to turn that stuff over. So it is such an important piece of your business that I spent 12 years not realizing. And I think one other thing that I realized was whenever I did hire project managers and different positions and an administrative assistant, it was like none of them were working out. Guess whose fault it was? Mine.
Yeah.
Yes. It was
Usually.
not, I
Yeah.
wasn't training them well. I wasn't
Sure.
telling them exactly what they should be doing. I wasn't, I was giving them so much freedom, and that all feels well and good, but it's like they needed to know what processes were in here. And so now
Hmm.
I'm finally doing that 13 years later, so we live
Oh,
and we
yeah.
learn, right?
Well, and that's a little bit of what I do as it's like teaching myself because I'm a leadership coach. And so I help people figure out how to communicate with their teams. And so I'm having to take my own advice and turn around, and because I have a podcast producer and now I'm going to have basically an executive assistant. And she being able to communicate with her, we've already done it before. So I'm like, oh, this is territory I've already walked. It's okay. I know how to do this. So maybe that's another one for listeners, as an idea. Somebody that you've already worked with before might be a good starting place.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, finding the right one, finding that opposite side of the brain is such a good
Yeah.
thing too. If you're a dreamer and you're a visionary, you have
Yeah.
to find the implementer and the
Yeah.
systems and processes person.
Yeah.
The most important thing you'll do, which you're definitely discovering, which is awesome. Is there anything else that you want to tell our listeners before we go?
Well, I kind of started with the whole this was my biggest life lesson, but the one thing I want women to hear is that you please think for yourself. You are capable. You are smarter than you think. Even if you quote unquote don't have a degree or are just a mompreneur or are just running this business because it's something that was in your family, or if you're getting into business for the first time, if you've raised a family, you have so much more wisdom than you think, and you have the ability to figure things out. Now, we all want help, but please think for yourself. Go with your dream. Look at the things that really matter to you in order for you to be able to show up in a way that will literally draw people to you because you're magnetic in your own authenticity. So it's always think for yourself.
Yes, I 100% agree with that. And I think it is important to have that model or slash mentor, but it's almost, I always say, like, you should find somebody that has been where you are and is where you want to go, right? Not
Hmm.
exactly, and not do
Hmm.
exactly what they've done, but just to know it's even possible, right? Because
Yeah.
I always say, like, you have to believe it to see it happen instead of
Yeah.
see it to believe it. And so whenever you see somebody else doing it, it's so much more possible for yourself. So I
Mm.
totally agree. Yes. Think for yourself. I love that so much. Yeah. So thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
My pleasure.
Yeah. And all of your information will be down in the show notes so that way people can get in touch with you.
Awesome. I look forward to hearing from you, or from anybody. If you DM me on LinkedIn or Instagram, and tell me that you heard me here on this show, I will know that you're not spam, and I respond to all of them. So reach out.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Thank you.